So yeah. So it's 7 o'clock. So hi everyone. Welcome to today's session with Marty and Kristen, both from Silicon Valley. We're happy to have them here. And as I said, we will allow people to ask questions. Just raise your hands. They have they have a wealth of knowledge basically. And so we're looking forward to spending some time, 1 hour with them. Yeah. So I'll start with Marty, if that's fine. So, Marty, I know you're very big on discovery. You talk about it all the time. So I'm going to start with product discovery. I know that, I mean, you've always said that product teams should actually have face-to-face sessions with customers. We should also, I mean, ensure that we kind of interview them face-to-face. But with the pandemic, things have changed. I don't know what your thoughts are now about that. Yeah, and what do you think? Because I know you're an advocate for having face-to-face with our customers, our users, having a good understanding of their needs, basically. So yeah, so how has it been, or what do you think with the pandemic?
Well, sure. Well, first of all, the need for customer interaction face to face doesn't go away. However, there's a lot of things that do change with the pandemic. Of course, some things are much harder. Some things are actually easier. And one of the things that's easier is sitting down with your customers. In fact, of course, we're not doing it physically face to face, but we're doing it like this, Zoom. And if you look at the time that went into arranging travel and visits and the logistics, we can much more easily meet with more people this way. And there's a very good article. If you're interested, I'll send it to you. You can forward it on to your people who attended, by one of my favorite designers and user researchers that wrote about how they're able to do so much more and so much deeper interactions just using Zoom. So this is one of the things that's actually a little easier.
Right. Okay. I guess then that so that means it works. We don't have to be physically be in people's faces to do
Right.
discovery. And
That's right.
then you also said the follow-up question then that I remember you keep saying also that working remotely with our team members. So as a product manager, you should sit with your product designer, you should sit with the lead engineer. How then does this also work in terms of
Yeah.
teams?
Well, this is one of those areas that's harder, not easier. Obviously, you can't sit co-located with your team if everybody's working from home. Um, and to be honest, sometimes this doesn't matter that much. If you look at product teams, there's really two things we're doing all the time. We're doing discovery work to figure out what to build, and we're doing delivery work to build it. The delivery work doesn't need to be sitting together. In fact, there's an argument that when you sit together, there's a little too many interruptions. And so working from home, assuming you don't have to worry about children and teaching, all those things that a lot of parents do have to worry about right now. But you can actually get a lot of work done without those, working from home. But for discovery work, it's harder because we do require that collaboration. And doing everyday Zoom call with your designer and engineers works. I mean, you can do that. It's not the same as if you're sitting together, going to lunch together, looking over each other's shoulder. You don't have as much opportunity for that. My favorite word for this is really serendipity. It means that just when something magical happens, you realize, oh, I didn't know that's what you meant, or I didn't know that's what you were thinking. And so we have that. Now, of course, it's not impossible for that to happen over Zoom calls, but it is harder. And there are a number of things that sort of undermine our chances of this. One of them is people are not generally as polite to each other when they're online as they are when they sit next to each other. And I don't just mean, niceties. I mean, very often we have teams that really do get along great with each other when they sit together. And then when they sit apart and they start using email and they start using Slack to communicate, there's a lot of situations where people don't necessarily intend to come across as mean or a jerk or something like that, but they do. And when it does happen, then they're not confronted on that as much and as openly as when they're sitting together. So the personal relationships can actually be hurt working remotely, and you have to work extra hard to counteract that. And there's I could keep going. This is a very big topic, obviously. How do you make things work in a work from home situation? But there are other problems as well that are more likely to happen when you're not sitting together that you have to fight against. The bottom line is your managers that are supposed to be coaching your product managers, designers, and engineers, they need to take a very active role in making sure these issues don't come up, and when they do, tap them down really quickly so that teams can stay working effectively.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, because I know that's something that is an ongoing debate. I'm supposed to sit with my product designer, I'm supposed to sit with my product manager and my engineer, but as you said, communicating via the electronic means is just what we have to do. And it's kind of working, I guess, for most people. We don't even have a choice. So yeah, thanks for that. So I'll go to Kristen before I then allow the audience to start asking questions. Marty speaks very highly of your leadership skills. He's always talking about it. I'm actually curious to understand, maybe as a leader, what are the important skills that you think one should have as a product leader? And how do you then get to manage your different stakeholders? Yeah, so
good questions. And I'm sure when Marty talks about me with leadership, he probably says, I always say, every problem is a people problem. And, all problems are people problems. And I think foundationally, that's always been my approach to leadership, right? In the sense of being very people-centered and be people-centric. When you think about leadership, I look at leadership as, in almost all cases, a leader is a manager too as well. But leaders are responsible for your strategic context, kind of where are you going? Why are we here? Where are we going? How do we plan to get there? What's important right now? And the culture, the language, the environment, the behaviors that guide what we do. And managers are responsible for, finding, attracting, and recruiting talent, and then coaching them to competency and beyond, as well as pointing them to what's important as an objective. As a product leader, I take it very personal, like seriously, in terms of my work with people, right? I love Marty's quote around, great products come from great product teams. Great product teams are made up of ordinary people. and these ordinary people need to be coached and supported. And, when you discover that the magic of building an amazing product comes from putting ordinary people together with cross-functional skill sets and truly empowering them by giving them meaningful problems to solve. And you manage the dynamic of them collaborating well and going through discovery. Once you understand that little formula very well, then you anchor in on your focus on people. Yeah. You are very stubborn on ensuring that you are spending meaningful time equipping people with what they need to succeed. Right. So, as a product leader, I take on the responsibility of talent management. I don't outsource it to HR or some group. I am responsible for building the best team. I mean, if you think about, in Nigeria, we watch our football and our soccer. If I told you, build the best soccer team, you want Messi and Ronaldo, and that's the same mindset I go about building product, right? But you think about it, all of those people still have a coach. It doesn't matter how talented you are. So the secret is not A players in that sense, is that you have a team that works well together and they are coached to that excellence or that competency. So, I when I think about product leaders, I typically gravitate towards people that understand the role of the individual as the secret to their success and the role of the team in building products together. You asked about stakeholder management. In some cases, I think many people falsely define what stakeholders are. In some ways, they kind of say everybody is a stakeholder, and I typically differentiate stakeholders from people that just care. Because you could just be, there are people that just care about the products. This is fair. And we need those people in the work we have. But I see stakeholders as people that in some ways can veto or can say no, and maybe my product doesn't go out. And, so the first thing I want to do is to be able to identify those people. And I make sure I understand that your level of interest could differ from your level of influence, right? So you could be interested in what we do, but not necessarily influential in making any meaningful changes. And so working with stakeholders, where I see teams kind of frail with this, is that they do it after the fact, right? After they've, or when they are in delivery. And this is a discovery activity, meaning ensuring that it works for your business, your stakeholders who support it. It does require, again, product leadership to do evangelism upfront, right? So if your stakeholders are surprised about what you're working on, if your stakeholders are, you cannot create missionaries of people, people that know why, if they don't know what the message is. And so I want leaders to do a good job upfront of talking to your stakeholders about why we're trying to focus on these problems and where we're trying to go. And then through that, I want the product managers to tackle the risk of stakeholder engagement early in discovery by bringing them along the journey. This is not decision by consensus or decision by committee, but ensuring that they feel like they are a part of the solution. In many cases, we see a stakeholder say no, and they may just be saying, think about this, and we think it's a no. Or, and in many cases, they just want to be heard. They want you to consider the risk in their world. And this is a very deliberate activity, not a side activity. It's one that product teams have to tackle head on.
Right. Thank you so much. I think Emeka wants to ask a question, so I'll ask him to unmute.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I feel so excited to be here. Seeing Marty Kagan here is like a dream come true, right? I used to read your articles on Silicon Valley, SVP. Like, I'm super excited. Like, when Funto talked about this, like, I was like, I don't have to miss this at all costs, right? So, yeah, like, I'm projecting, right? I'm on the call. So I don't know what to say. So my question goes like this for you, Marty. So I'm a big advocate of product innovation, right? I would ask, my question would be, what's your thoughts on product innovation post-COVID-19, which is one, right? Post-COVID-19. Then also, what's your thoughts on product innovation in emerging markets like Africa? So what's your thoughts? Because I believe you've been a strong disciple of product innovation for the past, for God knows how many years, right? So yeah, what's your thought? Like, I want to hear your own perspective to it, Marty. Like, yeah.
Sure. Well, good question for sure. And actually, one of the reasons it's good that we have Christian on this call is he actually knows. I mean, he's Nigerian. He's done a lot of tech products in Nigeria, in Africa, and so he knows better. I have had a few visits to Africa to work with tech companies, but to be honest, they were South Africa, which, as you know, is not the same. So I hope to explore and learn more about the local tech hubs, tech communities. And one of the things I really love to see. Like I have seen this happen in India, in China, and in Brazil over the last 15 years. Initially, they just did a little bit of technology, and then they started doing some products for other companies, mostly American companies. And now in all of those places, what really makes them great is they're doing products for their own countries. And I mean, there's such a massive opportunity, obviously, in the continent of Africa to do solutions that work for all the different areas and all the different needs. And I realize there's many different political systems, many different cultural systems. So you have to, the same product is not likely to work all over. We need to make sure that you can develop great products for each set of customers. And that to me is the real success, is where you're doing products for your communities that are better than anything anybody from US or Germany or China can do. So that's why I'm excited about the future there. And I love seeing so many faces on this call, that are in Nigeria or in Africa, not just, in the US or in the UK, for example. And you also asked about, you asked about innovation post-COVID, which, well, first of all, there's been a lot of innovation during COVID, obviously, because it has created, obviously, nobody wants a pandemic. I don't think anybody does, but it's a reality, right? We're dealing with a pandemic, and a lot of companies have realized, wow, there are some different needs here that didn't really exist so much before. And most things were there, but not at the level. The pandemic accelerated changes so dramatically. And I don't see the world going back afterwards. I see us getting the best of both. We've already got teams where they're in communities, certainly in the US, where it's a little bit safer. And so they're starting to go back into offices, in a controlled way. And I don't see them stopping, though, with remote employees. One of the great things about remote workers is you can now hire talent anywhere in the world. And this is something that's hard maybe to understand unless you were in San Francisco before the pandemic. We were out of space. We couldn't hire people to come work at the companies because there literally wasn't room for them to live. And so they would have to drive for hours a day just to get in, and it was just getting unreasonable. And so even if the pandemic had not happened, we were moving towards hiring people all over the world. It's just happened much faster after the pandemic. Just like a lot of people today, the pandemic is what made them start doing things like buying meals online and buying clothes online and things that they wouldn't have done before online. So these things have changed. And I absolutely think post-pandemic, I'm very much looking forward to the post-pandemic world because I want to get the benefits of what we've achieved during the pandemic, but I want the benefits of what we can do when we can get together again.
So if I get you clear, so if I get you clearly, you're saying cultural shifts will change, right? Or they're going to be same, if I get you clearly. So Marty, are you saying post-COVID, in terms of product innovations, cultures will change, right? If I get you clearly?
Well, I wasn't saying cultures will change. I was saying post-COVID, I think that we'll be able to get the benefits of both what we had before the pandemic and what we learned during the pandemic. So those two together, I am very optimistic about after the pandemic, yes.
Okay, sounds great. All right,
thank you, Emeka. Thank you, Marty, for that. So I guess we're still waiting, but we have some questions. We have more questions here. So I remember that, Christian, you spoke about building product teams and empowering product teams. I would like to understand what's been most challenging Um, and how have you been able to overcome the challenge of actually building product teams? I know you mentioned something about being a coach and actually having to like building a football team and selecting the best of the best. Well, then I guess you have challenges along the way. I don't know what kind of challenges. So you may want to share based on your experience. That would be nice.
I was actually just talking to somebody in Nigeria about product teams too as well, and some of the tough decisions kind of around that. And it is the job of the product leader to think about this. There is a cultural. We talked about discovery first, um, and I think many companies prematurely jump to building a team of engineers without discovering what they want to build. In some ways it's like building a house, and halfway through it you realize you need a plumber or you need electrical, but you've already laid the foundation and you're now on the second floor. And but the risk for me is that we are limiting our innovation in some ways because we are focused on what skills we have and what than the best way to do things. So typically my early hires in building a team are really your discovery core, your product manager, your designer, and a lead engineer. And they are tasked in discovery to answer those 4 questions we talk about. Can we build this? How do we build this? What's the best way to build it? Is it valuable? Will people use it? And does it work for our business? And they have to describe clearly what we want to build. And I'm focused on what is the best solution. And the best solution may be, building a team with skills I don't have today. It may be a machine learning or AI solution, and I need to go hire people to do that. And so I am such a big advocate of very early focused discovery and immersive discovery, if you can, to really understand what you need, backed by a very good vision. In some ways, the lack of a vision and strategy, I have seen that hurt more companies when they try to build teams, because in the absence of it, everything is important. I think we should expand to Ghana. Let's build a Ghana team. I think we should go into so they just keep building teams because everything seems possible. They lose focus and they don't have clear direction on where they are going. So your vision tells you the problems you want to solve meaningfully in a soon horizon, whether it's 3 to 5 years. And so you now know the kinds of technology you need to make an investment to build. So somehow your first teams are coming from your vision, right? We want to do those things. What kind of technology? And then your strategy tells you how you plan to go about doing that. So in some ways, the focus for your teams now and what problems are meaningful. So I often find, really a lack of strategic context and poor discovery to actually impact the choices we make around our teams than anything else. And most of the bad choices I just see, it's just like, you have a team that is a lot of orphan teams. We started this, it didn't work. So what do we do now? Well, we just keep working on it until somebody tells us something else, right? And we don't make the tough decisions of coaching people, and so we all letting people go that are, not going to help us get to our goals, right? And those are really some of the leadership challenges I see.
Okay. Right. Great. Thanks. Thank you so much. So I have a question from the audience. I don't know, anyone can take this, Marty or Kristen. So it goes, I'm starting a new role as a senior product manager with a company in the retail space, trying to transform into a product-led organization. What are the 3 top ideas you can share with me in transforming into a product-led organization? Yeah, so that's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great question. Either Christian or I know that both of us get this question a lot. It's sort of the right question. Maybe I'll share some thoughts, and I know Christian has other ones. So first of all, I personally don't like to use the term product-led organization. I sort of think it sort of misguides people. Customer-led is great, but what we're really there is to come up with solutions that our customers love, but work for our business. So That's what it's all about. When you say product led, a lot of people take it like a threat to their power or control, because now it means they lose. But anyway, in terms of what really is required, I'd say the biggest things, first of all, the company has to change how they think of technology. It's very likely that the way they think of the role of technology today is as a cost center. IT. When you hear people say IT, it always makes me nervous. They're probably talking about not what we mean by a product culture. They're talking about the purpose of the teams are there to serve the business rather than serve customers. So that's a fundamental change. Great product companies understand the role of technology. Look at the way Tesla views technology and compare that to the way Boeing views technology. Boeing outsourced their mission control software to some Indian developers. That's like the dumbest thing you could possibly do. The only reason they do something that dumb is because they think of technology as a cost. And they say, hey, we could reduce our cost. No. And of course, 2 years, the planes have been grounded after killing however many people.
Yeah.
On the other hand, at Tesla, they technology as, I mean, basically a Tesla is a computer on 4 wheels, right? That's what it is. The software updates constantly. It's unlike all of the other cars. It actually gets more valuable every night because it gets new software constantly. And it is, it shows what you can really do if you put technology at the core. Now those, an airplane and a car are very visible examples, but this exists everywhere. And so I would say the first is this role of technology. The second is the leadership, the CEO especially. If the CEO is not on board on transforming, it almost certainly won't happen. They really have to be. And the reason for that is that changing the culture, like we're talking about, impacts more than product management, more than design, and more than engineering. It impacts everything. It impacts HR, it impacts finance, it impacts sales, marketing, everything, legal, everything. And so unless the CEO is on board, really taking a major role, it won't happen. The stakeholders will say, I'm not interested in doing this differently. And so it doesn't happen. And maybe the third most important thing I would argue are the leaders of product. When I say leaders of product, that's the leaders of product management, product design, and engineering, like Christian said a minute ago. And so those leaders, if the company is going to transform, it will happen because those leaders know what they're doing. In fact, I watched Christian be one of those leaders at 2 different companies before my recruiting efforts finally worked after about, I don't know, 10 years, Christian. I don't remember when I first started, sweet talking him into becoming a partner. But, I saw what he could do. And I saw him doing that, I think at 3 companies total, but I really saw him in key leadership roles at 2 and watched him transform those companies from terrible, to be honest, to awesome. Wow. And that's what good leaders do. And so, yeah, I'd say the first is understanding the role of technology. The second is the CEO. And the third most important are those leaders of product and design and engineering. You want to add anything to that, Christian?
Yeah, I do get that question a lot, and those are actually the 3 things I highlight. But I always like to get some personal accountability to what individuals can do, because they'll say, well, I don't control the CEO or the leader and the culture. They have to change, so I'm just gonna sit. If you think about it, I used to hear lots of companies say we are sales-led, or our CEO leads, and our or operations leads, and we want to be product led. And I like the more customer centric, because the real power if you're thinking about it, who is leading, actually comes from the customer, right? Sam Walton of Walmart used to always argue, the customer is the only person that can fire everybody in a company, including the CEO and the board, right? That's the only person, whoever we're there to serve. But if you think about a startup, the reason the CEO has this power to really tell everybody what to do is because they know more about the customer, the business, the industry than anybody else. In some ways, they're the ultimate product manager, right? Now, when a company says, or people say, I want to become product led, and they're thinking about the power dynamic, I challenge them and I say, well, the only way that truly happens is if you are the expert in the customer. If you know more about your customers than anybody else in the company, then people will look to you, because again, the job of the product team is to solve problems for customers in a way that works for the business. So if you know the customer very well, because if you think about a salesperson, when they tell you, I think you should do this, it is going to make me 10 million naira. You're going to say, well, sure. How do you know this? My customer said so. If you don't have any better insights or data to support that you know something better, then they seem to have the power because they have customer knowledge. So you have to be the acknowledged experts in your customers and your users to start to strengthen what you might call the power, but truly the influence of the product organization on the business. So the business is relying on you to know more about the customers and users, their problems, and to discover a solution to those problems. So often when I talk to teams and I say, look, yes, you need, but you could have good senior leadership support, you could have CEOs buy-in, but they might not have trust in you. And so they no longer empower you, and they might just tell you what to do. So I always tell teams, well, don't wait for all of your leaders. The job of the product team is to discover meaningful solutions through a deep understanding of the customer, the data, the business, and the industry that they're in. You have to be that expert to start to turn your company around.
Wow, that's I like that. Thank you, Vincent. I hope that answers your question. Thank you so much. That was really deep. It's even talking to me as Funto. Who are you? Are you a yes person, or are you able to say, look, this isn't the way we should go. We should actually go this way because this is what the data is telling us. So as a product manager, you have to understand your customers. You have to use your data and back it up and share it with the management. And that way, it makes you become, they don't lose confidence in you as a product manager. And that's really key. So Ernest, do you have a question? You raised your hand. Okay.
Funtel, while we're waiting, maybe I saw a question come in on the chat that was a pretty fun question.
Okay.
That we could also answer. Do you see the one I'm talking about? It's the one about how do you identify new good opportunities to go figure out a good solution for?
A wicked problem.
Yes, a wicked problem. I mean, clearly this is somebody who wants to really be an entrepreneur. They want to go out and solve a hard problem for the world, which of course, it's my kind of person. I love that. And I was, when I read that question, I was, Christian knows actually, before the pandemic, I was begging him to take me to Nigeria. I wanted to meet the local tech community. And of course, I'm still looking forward to doing that when we can travel. But when I read that question, I was remembering, because I was really lucky enough, timing wise, I was working for Netscape at the time, which was the original internet company, you probably know. But when India was just coming online, the internet was just starting there. And I got to meet so many startups. India is a very entrepreneurial culture, and lots and lots. And when I went there, I was struck by how many, I had already been to many places in Europe and Asia and the US that basically are not all that different. They're very much like a city in the US, like Chicago or something. And you find, but in India was so different. And for example, there were opportunities everywhere. I remember that The whole idea of Google Maps didn't work in India. Totally didn't work. Yahoo Maps, Apple Maps didn't work because in India, they don't have the sort of Western style roads from before they build towns. In fact, they were pointing out many of the roads don't even have names. They just, they're not always just because it's there today will mean it's there tomorrow. And so the whole idea of Google Maps was just a failure. And so they realized, wow, we need to do maps for India, which they did. This actually became the Yahoo Maps team, which was one of the first ones that did, maps that were actually useful in India. I remember another one that I just thought was amazingly interesting because it was so different than in the US. And that was none of the US dating sites had any success in India. They were all complete failures. And they all knew why, because in India, dating doesn't really work the way it does in San Francisco. It's very much the parents are kind of driving the whole process. And so all the dating sites were like, this is useless, irrelevant. We won't use it that way. And so what did it do? It meant that startups were created in India that really did address dating the way the Indian culture needed it. And my point is, I believe if you look around your communities, if you look around your country, you will see similar opportunities, things that are not well served by the products from the US or from anywhere, and that your fellow countrymen need. And those are my favorite opportunities. And they're just, they're just everywhere. If you look for them, you're looking for those pain points. How is banking done? Well, how can you do banking if you don't have the infrastructure, for example? So that creates new opportunities. There's some really interesting financial services startups in Africa right now because of that. And so my point is, look for those problems that are always there. They've always been there, but they are not served well by others. And I think that's just, you could build a massive company with that. Maybe you want to add, Christian? I know he's been doing his own opportunities there.
All right. Look, one of the key things to remind you is you have permission to solve problems that are affecting Nigeria. Nigeria is such a unique place, or Africa as a whole, not just the emerging market aspect, but you look at some of the dynamics. And I'm sure most of what Marty was saying in India resonates with a lot of you. I mean, we have some of the same dynamics. I think the joke is, a product that works everywhere else may not work in Nigeria, but if it works in Nigeria and India, it probably will work everywhere else, just because of how nuanced it is. There's even a reversed trust dynamic where, you look at cell phone companies. In America, we use the cell phone minutes and then we pay them at the end of the month. In Africa, you pay up front. We don't, and at the same time, we don't trust them. How did I really speak for 20 minutes this month? Show me my bill. There's a lack of trust. That's not a normal dynamic in the Western world. So there are nuances in our environment. When we think about problems, I started a company in Nigeria. I was visiting a couple of years ago, and I am watching the news, which I never am there locally watching it. And what am I seeing? Lots of kidnappings. And in one way I could be like, well, that's a Nigerian thing. They just kidnap people. Wow, they need to stop it. But I'm thinking to myself, how can I contribute to helping solve this problem using technology? I don't need permission from anyone or from the government. I am just thinking about the problem because you hear people's stories around it. Right. So I invested in building some technology today that, the military and the police force uses, and the SSS, they use that today to help track and retrieve individuals quickly. Right. So, but that's a flavor of the day. We have our problems in Nigeria and Africa, whether that's with power and infrastructure and, and you look at our pay stack that just got sold. Right. It's not a new problem space. They just focused on their market and solved it in a meaningful way for their customers. And, they just got purchased by Stripe. And so you have permission to solve meaningful problems in your market, in your country, in your space, using technology. And there are many unique problems that we have, or at least a unique approach that we could bring to solving them.
All right. Thank you very much, Kristen and Marty. I'm sure I see Juanita has responded and she's happy with the response, so that's fine. Ernest says he has a question, so I'll do that. After that, we'll have Theodora. So let's start with Ernest. So Ernest, please go on. Go ahead with your question.
Good evening, Marty. Good evening, Kristen. Thank you, Mrs. Funto, for organizing this. I mean, it's been very informative for me and educative. So during the course of the discussion, I've heard Marty as well as Kristen mention a lot about being customer driven. So I wanted to ask, between the skill, between having a skill to unearth users' needs and their pain points and frustration, and having a technical know-how on how to build products, which one weighs in more? So, I mean, why I ask this is, I mean, I'm coming from a UX background, like a UX researcher, and recently Google APM, it was advertised you could put in for the role, and on a section organized by Mrs. Funto with a Google APM, she also mentioned the fact that one of their criteria is technical know-how. At least we must have a knowledge of technology, maybe even know how to write some codes and all that. So I mean, it's sometimes I feel like it disenfranchises people like me. And at a point, I was like, okay, maybe I'll do within the year, or maybe next year I should learn something in coding, at least to have a knowledge of how to code at least a little. So my question is, between these two skills, which one weighs in more? I know both of them are important, and if you have the two, is a plus. But between the two of them, which one weighs more? And how can somebody from a background of maybe UX translate speedily into product management? Thank you.
Well, those are some big topics actually in there, not small questions. And I'm sure Christian will have thoughts on this too. But and first thing I want to say is the product designer UX role is a premier role. So there is no reason you need to switch to product management if you don't want to. The three really prestige roles on product teams are product manager, product designer, also known as UX, and the technical lead, the senior most engineer. Any of those three roles are awesome careers. Like awesome careers. I recommend them to students all the time. So they're great. So I'm just saying, don't leave UX if you don't want to. If you do want to move into the product role, that's great. Lots of people have done that and others have gone the other direction. To your broader question though, in terms of what's more important, the way I always try to frame it is that a great product is the result of combining a real customer problem with a solution that's just now possible. Whether you're a product manager, a product designer, or a tech lead, that's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do. And by the way, that is why companies like Google want their designers and their product managers to be fairly technical, just like they want their engineers to be very customer focused. It's because those three come together. Design really is where they meet. And so if you are a skilled product designer, by that I really mean somebody more than visual design, graphic design, but also interaction design, service design, user research. If you've got those skills, you're worth your weight in gold. That is so valuable to especially startups, but really any size company. Companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon and Netflix, they understand how valuable that is. Ernest was saying he's more of a UX researcher. Okay, well, that's different. First of all, that UX research skill is very useful. You can take that skill and progress. I would suggest you progress either to a product designer or to a product manager, because that'll give you more opportunities. And the reason is in a bigger company, they will have dedicated user researchers just doing that. But in most size companies, especially in emerging markets, they will look to their designer to have that UX, that user research skill. So I'm just looking at a way to get you positioned well for more positions. But it's where those two come together that the magic happens. And so it's not really one or the other. I wrote an article about this called Customer Inspired Technology Enabled. You can Google that term. And I gave a handful of examples of great products. I mean, products like Alexa, products like Google, that were really, and the iPhone, that were really, the reason they're so successful is because they are great examples of those coming together. So it's not really one or the other. The people that you want to, the good companies are going to look for people that understand and appreciate both the enabling technology and the critical importance of the customer. Do you want to add anything to that, Christian?
Perfectly said. Yeah.
All right, great. Theodora, do you still want to speak because you lowered your hand? Otherwise, we'll just go to the next question. Is she still there? Okay. So while we wait for her, I know this question is repeating itself. Somebody has actually, okay, so you would like to ask a question. All right. So I'll just ask to unmute. There you go.
Hi, Fonto. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Marty, and hi, Christian. I feel very honored to be in this session with you both. I have a quick question, right? I am a product manager in the e-commerce space. I just got into the e-commerce space, so it's a little bit new for me. And the question I have, this might be a little bit more targeted at Christian, but please, Marty, if you have an insight, I would appreciate it as well. So what do you think of the e-commerce space in Africa in terms of product management, the present state, future state, and what do you think is being currently left on the table?
Oh, wow. Are you at Jumia?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. It's a company called Patricia, and I handle their e-commerce products.
Okay. And look, and Marty, Jumia is like the Amazon equivalent.
That's right.
Coming into in Africa, and they do have challenges, very much like what Marty was calling out with infrastructure challenges, like how do I deliver packages? I mean, they're even trying to pay on delivery. I was looking at some data from them now. Many people are arriving at the door and seeing the package and claiming to not be the person, and people are not paying. So they are running into a lot of challenges trying to drive e-commerce. There was a trust problem in the beginning with taking payments. In terms of where the future is, phenomenally high. I do think it will be a problem that will be tackled. In some cases, the companies that are trying to tackle the problems may have to tackle the infrastructure problem with it as well. For instance, Starbucks struggled when they moved to India in trying to open up stores because they didn't have access to fresh milk, and the logistics of getting the fresh milk. So they invested themselves in building the infrastructure of the distribution for the milk, as well as trying to open the stores. It's like KFC trying to open up in Nigeria. They struggled with supply, of chicken that is fresh. The reason McDonald's has not opened up in Africa, in Nigeria, for instance, I have been on panels with that team several times, is because of our power problem. Right? The liability of losing power and selling bad food against the McDonald's brand is just too big of a risk for them to take. right? So they can either make the decision of tackling the infrastructure problem. People have promised, I will buy a generator, I will have 24-hour, but all of those things came with so much risk for them. So, I can sense from your question that you're seeing many challenges with e-commerce in Africa. I am saying that they are fair, but I'm also suggesting that the companies that make it through this are the ones that either take on some responsibility of tackling the infrastructure problems as well. So, when you talk about Marty saying you find a meaningful customer problem and a technology or a solution that is just now possible. In some ways, it's just now possible that you can, order something on Instagram and pay, and somebody drives a motorcycle and delivers it to your house in Nigeria. Like, that's cool, right? But if you don't have some of this infrastructure, but you have the technology, if you tackle the infrastructure, you have a big opportunity in the market to do it. So I think the problem is what solving. The current solutions may be failing, but it's what solving. So I will stick with some of it. Africa has such a high mobile penetration, such a high technology adoption. Our big problems are more infrastructure driven than they are about technology adoption.
Right. I have just one more follow-up question, if that's okay.
Sure.
How about, what do you think about it being run as an omni-channel? So it's not just a website where people, so it's not just e-commerce online, it's an omni-channel, knowing Africa and the kind of people, the different personas that we have in Africa.
Yeah. For Africa, it may be meaningful, I think, and strategic to approach it in that way. I work with many big banks in the US, and in the last 6 months during the pandemic, 94% of all bank accounts were opened online, digitally. And then you look at one of the biggest banks saying, I have 24,000 stores. What do I do with those now, right? In some ways, they always knew that technology was important, but this has accelerated the role of technology within their organization. In many cases, an omni-channel approach for Africa may be sound for building your brand, for tackling your risk with ensuring you have the right products and you understand the customers before going into e-commerce. But is it going to be the long-term vision for what you might want to do? Very, very difficult to see that. There will be an Amazon-like experience in Africa. The question is, is it 10 years out or 20 years out?
Yeah, right. I was also in e-commerce for a bit, so I know I was in Conga. So we were the other, yeah, and it was a struggle. I mean, they're still struggling. So I know it's tricky, most especially in this part of the world. There was issues with trust, mismanagement of funds. It was exciting, right? It was really exciting, but unfortunately, it just didn't work out the way we wanted it to. So Jumia, they're kind of sticking it out because they also have international presence. So those ones are kind of able to cover up, but we were local. It was just in Nigeria, and then we had our tech arm in South Africa. But I know it was really tough. So yeah, Nigeria, we have our problems. Thanks for that. We're very close to the end. We have about 7 more minutes. So one of the questions basically that I really liked was, there was a question around the future of product management. What do you think is the future of product management? What kind of skills do we then need to start to, I don't know how to say, how do we then start to improve ourselves so that we can then be able to still work within that space, basically? So I don't know if that makes sense. And then afterwards, maybe Marty will share 1 or 2 things about his new book coming up that will be released in December. We're waiting to have that. Yeah. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Yeah. Go on, Marty.
Okay. So you're before you asked about the book, you were asking about what was the
future of product management, the kind of skills.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't see the role of product management going away, just like I don't see the role of design and I don't see the role of engineering going away. Those three roles are so different in what they cover that they just seem, it's hard for me to conceive or imagine a future where those roles are not needed. Somebody to worry about the customer, like Christian said, worry about the data, worry about the industry, worried about the different business constraints, the legal constraints, the ethical constraints. This role doesn't go away. Now, the techniques that we use are getting better all the time. In fact, the techniques today, you wouldn't even recognize them from the techniques several years ago. So just, and that's been true really for design is also, and true for a little less true with engineering. That is changes a little slower, but the technologies are much better. We have a much better foundation for engineers to build on. So I really think it stays. And I do think that there's no question that there are some big companies like Amazon, like in China, for example, Alibaba. There are big companies that see one of the biggest continents in the world, Africa, and they see all these people that are now connected to the internet because they have a phone. And they're like, I'm coming after Africa. I want our products in Africa. Now, those companies are very good. I've worked with them. They're very good at product. So if you're not good at it, they will win. And so I think this is true all around the world. But if you are good at it, well, they might try to buy you. That happens a lot, instead of winning, they just try to buy. But you have a real, I think the best answer is for you as a tech industry to build your skills and provide the best solutions possible for your customers, wherever they are. Like Christian said, if it works for Nigeria, it'll probably work a lot of the world, and that is great. And companies like Amazon are not invincible. Look at, I don't know if Shopify is in Africa, but Shopify is amazing story. You should check out their story, even if they're not there yet. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, especially in e-commerce, because as amazing as Amazon is, a lot of companies are going bankrupt because the only way they could sell is through Amazon, and Amazon takes half their money. Yeah. So they need, that created the demand for a much better solution. And this company based in Canada said, this could be much better. And it is. They're amazing. So I would strongly encourage you to invest in yourselves, invest in your skills, and if you can, the sooner you can do us, start creating products. Yeah, I don't know enough about the ecosystem. Is there ways to get funding? But the cost to create a company is much less than it used to be, at least in most of the world. And so I'm hoping the barriers come down for you. And I would love to see, a year from now, I'd love to see 1,000 new startups, based out of Nigeria that are trying different approaches.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Kristen?
And your book?
Yeah.
Well, did Christian want to say?
I was going to say for you to wrap up with your book, with Empowered, coming out.
Yeah. Well, there is a new book. Yes. For those that don't know, I wrote a book called Inspired before, which is really aimed at product teams. It talks about how you do what we were just talking about. How do you discover a solution that people want to buy and love? But that book didn't really talk about how leadership needs to put in place the environment for those teams to succeed. And so I realized that was a problem, because in many companies, they don't know, the leaders don't know how to set up a product organization, how to be a product company. And so Empowered was written to share the lessons, not from teams, but from leaders. So how the best companies really set up product design, engineering, so that they can work and the way they need to.
Good.
Great. So we're looking forward to having the book. I see it's available sometime in December. I mean, a lot of us, we all refer to Inspired. So trust me, most of us on the call, we've read and we keep reading. You learn. It's like when you open, you see something different. So it's such a great book. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for honoring our invite. I guess everyone here. I'm sorry we're not able to answer all the questions. We just have an hour. Maybe some other time we can have them back. But this has been thoroughly enjoyable and very insightful, I must say. Thank you so much for this. Thank you.
Thank
And
you
thank
all.
you to everyone also for joining.
Thank you for hosting, Funta. Appreciate it.
Keep in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll keep in touch, definitely. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. So yeah, we look forward to having you in Nigeria too. Yeah.
Me too.
All right.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye,
Cheers.
everyone. Bye.